Hello, and welcome to Bloody Good. My name's Emily, and this is From the Page to the Screen, a show where I look at horror movies and the books they're based on to determine just how accurate they are. Today, I'm looking at The Long Walk by Stephen King, and looking at what changes were made from the characters to the premise to just completely changing the end of the story. So let's dive in. The story is set in a dystopian America where every year a group of boys compete in The Long Walk, a competition where you just keep walking, in the hopes of being the last one walking and thus the one to win the prize, which is completely up to them. They choose what they win. To win, you simply have to keep walking, maintaining a speed of 4 miles per hour. There's no help, there's no finish line, and if you dip under 4 miles per hour, you get a warning. And once you get 3 warnings, you get your ticket. And you don't want to get your ticket, unfortunately. Stephen King is the king of contemporary horror, and his books have sold over 400 million copies worldwide. And so many of them have been turned into movies, TV shows, and even graphic novels. So it made perfect sense to start with Stephen King. The film, released this September, keeps largely the same plot as the book, with a few changes. One big change the film makes is that the speed is lowered from 4 miles per hour to 3, which I think was a really smart decision, because when we left the cinema, we went straight to the gym. And I thought, I'm gonna hop on the treadmill and see if I can do it. And 3 miles per hour was pretty comfortable for me. It was just a nice stroll like I would normally walk to my train station. So I thought, let's up it to 4 miles per hour. And that was not so comfortable. That was a jog for me. And I'm kind of on the taller side. So I can't even imagine if you were a shorter person what 4 miles per hour would be. So credit to the filmmakers there for thinking, 4 miles per hour is a bit dramatic. Another quite big change that the film makes is reducing the amount of competitors from 100 to 50. And I think this really works for the film because it gives you a chance to get to know the boys a bit better. Instead of 100 in a huge crowd, it's 50, and it's one boy representing each state. And I think this really works because it puts a lot more pressure on our main character, Ray Garrity, who is the home state boy of Maine, where the story is taking place. Which is not a surprise if you're a Stephen King fan, because most of his stories take place in his own home state of Maine. Now, obviously, if you're reducing from 100 boys to 50, you're going to lose a lot of characters. But the filmmakers were really clever here, and they amalgamated a bunch of the characters into the ones we see in the film. A character like Olsen, you can pick through different characters in the book and think, oh, they got his personality from there, they got his ticket from there. There's little details that you can pick out from characters in the film that you can attribute to different characters from the book, where we've kind of squished some of them together. The story follows our main boy, literally main character and from Maine, Ray Garrity, and our secondary character is Peter McVree. In the film, this relationship is explored a lot more than in the book, and I think that really, really works for the film, and I think the film really hangs on this friendship that is developed throughout. And I do have to say, Cooper Hoffman and David Johnson delivered absolutely stellar performances here, and they really, really make you feel for these characters. I felt for them so much more in the film than I did the book, because their dynamic together really sold this friendship, and you really, really didn't want to see either of them go. Another little change comes with the motivation for Garrity to sign up for the Long Walk. In the film, he has a really strong desire for revenge, and he knows exactly what he wants if he wins. Whereas in the book, it's left a bit more ambiguous, and you don't necessarily know exactly what he wants if he wins in the end. Another change that's made is the age of the boys. In the book, they're 16 or younger, whereas in the film, they are explicitly older than 16, because they make a reference to one of the boys barely looking 16. Now, in the book, there are some really horrific descriptions of what happens when some of the boys get their tickets, and I think it absolutely works in the film. There were some truly disgusting moments, especially the one who gets run over by the treads of the tank was disgusting. And one thing I'm glad of was they didn't really show Olsen's death, because in the book, it is horrific. He gets peppered with bullets, and his intestines are described as falling out, and he's picking them back up and trying to shove them back into his stomach. And I'm really glad we didn't see that, because that's horrible. I think a change I do also appreciate in the film is that it doesn't go into the huge kind of sexual stuff that Stephen King always seems to find in his books. He makes quite a few references to Ray Garrity's mum and her breasts, and I'm glad that wasn't included in the film, because as much as I love reading Stephen King books, there are a lot of moments in pretty much every one I've read where I look at it and I go, didn't need to know that. Didn't need to know that that's how you feel about that girl. And it happens quite a lot in this book, and I'm glad it's just kind of swept away in the film, because we didn't need to know all of that. We know they're all kind of teenager, 20-something boys, and they have hormones, but we don't need to know about all of that. The ending is where we get our biggest change of all. In both the book and the film, the final 3 walkers are Garrity, McVree, and Stebbins, who's another character who has been set out from the beginning as a really strong contender to win the whole thing. In the book, McVree reaches his breaking point and he simply just sits down and accepts that he's going to be killed. And it's sad, but it's really dealt with quite quickly, and we move on and it's just Garrity and Stebbins left. And they carry on walking for kind of an unclear amount of time before Garrity decides it's his time to call it as well. And he catches up with Stebbins to admit defeat when Stebbins just drops dead. And Garrity is left as the winner. And he has no idea what is going on around him. He is so exhausted, mentally and physically. He doesn't really understand that people are trying to pat him on the shoulder and congratulate him because he's won the long walk. And he just kind of nudges past people. And he just carries on walking in a daze. And that's how the book ends. And that all happens in about 2 or 3 pages. It's really quick, it's really sudden. And it just kind of left me wanting a little bit more. In the film, the final 3 go out pretty differently. Stebbins explains to Garrity and McVree that he is the rabbit, and he's done playing his role for the Major, and he's sick and tired of it. And he just turns around, faces the officers, and gets his ticket. Which leaves us with Garrity and McVree, this pair who've bonded so much along this journey. And it just leaves you knowing you're going to be heartbroken whichever way it goes. And I think this change really works for the film because of this relationship that we've seen develop between Garrity and McVree. In the book, by McVree going out early and leaving Garrity with Stebbins, he leaves Garrity with this sense of doubt. Because Stebbins has been such an imposing character up until now, he's the one everyone has said since the start, he's probably going to win it. What's the point? So leaving Garrity with that doubt in himself. Whereas in the film, by killing Stebbins off first and leaving Garrity and McVree together, it leaves them with this knowing feeling that one of them is not going to make it out. And it's really hard to consider the thought of that. Because they've developed such a really close bond throughout the whole film, it leaves them heartbroken, and it leaves us heartbroken as the viewers as well, because we've really grown to love these two throughout the film. It's a much more emotional ending to the film than the kind of nihilistic turn that the book takes. Because Garrity is our protagonist, and he's made it clear what he wants to do if he wins. He wants to kill the Major and put an end to the long walk for good. You can kind of make the assumption, obviously Garrity is going to live and McVree is going to die. And at first, you think you're proven right, because McVree steps back and lets Garrity carry on. And you think, oh, no. I was in tears already at this point because I knew it was going to be one of them that died. And seeing McVree just step back and let Garrity win was heartbreaking to me. And then they doubled down on the heartbreak by making Garrity turn around, gather up warnings by dragging McVree back up and carrying on walking. And he pushes McVree forward, and McVree kind of walks forward with a smile on his face, knowing they're both still together. And then McVree hears the gunshot, and Garrity has been killed. And it was completely heartbreaking. And I'm sure it came as a massive shock to anyone who read the book first, because it's not how the book ends, obviously. Garrity is our final walker. But for me, I went in cold. I didn't read the book first. I bought the book ready for when I'd watched the film, but I knew nothing going into it. So I was completely heartbroken at the end. I cried for probably the last 20 or so minutes of the film. And when the credits started rolling, I had to sit there for a minute and just calm myself down before I left the cinema, because it would have been embarrassing to walk out in the state I was in. With his wish, McVree asks for a gun and fulfills Garrity's wish by killing the Major. And then he just turns around and carries on walking, just like Garrity does in the book. But this time it feels purposeful and intentional instead of the days that Garrity finishes the book in. And I really, really like that change. Like I said before, the ending of this book is pretty abrupt, whereas the film feels more realised. It puts more emotion and more gravitas and more drama behind it. And it kind of leaves you feeling a bit more fulfilled than the book did, for me personally at least. It changes some things, but overall I think it's a really faithful adaptation. And what it does change, I think it changes for the better. But ultimately, I would have to say the film is my favourite. And I don't say that a lot. Normally, I read a book and I prefer it to the film. But in this case, I do just think the film just elevated the story a little bit more. So if you've read The Long Walk and seen the film, let me know in the comments if you agree with me that the film is better, or let me know if you disagree and why. Before you go, here's a little bit of trivia you might not have known. George A. Romero actually had the rights to make this film in the 80s, but never actually did anything with it, so it rolled on to someone else. And now we have the film we have now. But if you are a fan of George A. Romero, why not check out some of our other videos where we compare the original and remakes of some of his classic horror films.